What's up guys, my name is Brian, the owner of Engine Customs and Performance. Today I'm going to show you how to perform an engine oil and filter change on a Fiat 500 Abarth. Now this procedure is going to work not only on the 500 Abarth, but as well as the 500 Turbo and naturally aspirated 500. You can even take this same procedure on the 500L and the 500X 1.4 and the Dodge Dart. The oil I'm going to be using today is a Pennzoil European formula full synthetic 5W40. On the 1.4 liter turbo, it requires 4 quarts of replacement. We're also going to be replacing the oil filter with a genuine Mopar oil filter. We offer this as a package directly on our website at ngencustoms.performance.com. Let's go ahead and show you the tools you're going to need to get the job done. The tools you're going to need are going to include a 13mm wrench, a 3/8 inch socket wrench, couple extensions, a 10mm as well as an 8mm socket, swivel socket, a 27mm socket, and of course a funnel. The only thing you're not going to see right now is a drain pan for the oil, which you'll see later on in the video. So before we get started, the first thing I like to do is check the oil level and also the condition of the oil. So we're going to go ahead and take the dipstick, which is located here. Remove it, and wipe it clean, and then put it back. Put it all the way down, and lift up, and let's see where the oil's at. Okay, so the good news is we do still have oil on the dipstick. Bad news is it's pretty low. If you look at the condition of the oil, it's pretty dark, but that's normal on these turbocharged engines. You really want to make sure that you check the oil every 500 to 1,000 miles. Now this car's gone about 5,000 miles since the last oil change, so it's definitely due. So we're going to start underneath the car. We have to remove the factory skid plate in order to access the oil pan where the oil drain plug is. Now the skid plate is secured with 6 bolts. They're size 10mm. So you got one here and one here. Then you got one here and then one here and then one here and one right there. So I'm going to take my 10mm electric impact, which you can also just use a socket wrench. But for speed, I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Put your bolts to the side. Imagine if I was using a socket wrench, it would take a little bit longer. One more to go. And you'll see it just kind of flops down. So I like to just set this thing out of the way towards the back. We'll deal with it once we're done. Just a quick side note, make sure you remove the oil cap to release any pressure before you drain the oil from the oil pan. All right, now it's time to drain the oil. So make sure you've got a 5-quart drain pan. And then you're gonna take your 13mm socket wrench and we're gonna go ahead and loosen it up, like so. Once it's loose, it's faster just to take your fingers. Now it's gonna come out here in just a minute. Now I will mention that you see this frame brace right here. If you want, you can remove this, but it's not required. It's just gonna spill on it, but you can always just clean it off after. So make sure you line up your drain pan, because once it comes out, to avoid spilling as much as you can here onto the ground, here it comes. Unfortunately, this oil, there it goes. Now that the oil is completely drained out of the oil pan, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the drain plug. And you're just going to see it's still just dripping a little bit. That's fine. Just we'll clean that up here in just a minute. And just put it in as tight as you can using your fingers. It's just a lot faster. And once you get it snug with your fingers, then you can take your 13mm socket wrench, or just your wrench, excuse me, tighten it up. Just make sure it's good and tight. Now we get to clean up our mess. Did pretty good, all of it went into the pan instead of on the floor. Just wipe off the brace. Just get any excess oil that may have spilled. Now it's time to replace the oil filter, but you want to make sure that the drain pan is still underneath the car. We're going to move it forward just a little bit, just to line up, because when we replace that oil filter, you're going to lose a little bit of oil as well. Now we need to remove the air intake in order to gain access to the oil filter. Now, whether you have the factory air intake system or you have an aftermarket, there's a pretty good chance that the clamp that you need to remove connecting to the turbo is going to require an 8mm socket. So we're going to go ahead and remove that, or loosen it, and then remove the air intake. Now that we have the air intake out of the way, we're going to access that oil filter cap. Now the way I do it, I take 2 extensions, put them together, I take a swivel socket, and then a 27mm socket, and then I go ahead and place it onto the top of the cap. So I'm going to place that 27mm socket onto the top of this cap, which you see right here. You see it's kind of buried. So as you can see, with the 2 socket extensions, it sticks up high enough to where you can easily access it with your socket wrench. And then we can go ahead and loosen the cap. And you just kind of have to grab it, work its way up. Sometimes it'll fall. That's why you have the drain pan underneath. All right, now we've got the old one out, so I'm going to show you what you need to do to install the new one. All right, so now we're going to put this new oil filter in to the oil filter housing cap here. So you have this little O-ring. So just take a little flathead or a hook and get the old one off. Just kind of discard it. Here's the old oil filter. Now we're going to take our new one. Comes with a new oil filter. And make sure you have that new O-ring. So just kind of work it around. Because if this is not installed properly, you will have a massive oil leak. So I just kind of run my finger all the way around until you've got the O-ring all the way around the bottom. Then you take your oil filter. See these little notches here? You're going to set it inside the cap and then just twist it until you can't pull it out. All right, now we're going to take that oil filter, go ahead and put it back in the car. Just kind of work it down in there. This is where the notches come into play, because if that oil filter was just loose, you'd probably drop it 100 times trying to get it back in. Sometimes you just do it based on feeling. Once you get it back in there, take your hand. So you can see here, it's pretty much back. I just take my hand here and I screw it in as much as I can using my hand. And now I'm going to get my socket. Just kind of line it up. Back into place, and then go ahead and tighten it. You will feel it get very snug. So if you can still turn it, it's not all the way tight. So once you feel it's tight, then you know it's all the way on. Just a couple tips once you finish putting that oil filter cap back on. One, don't try to over tighten it. If you do, you could crack that cap because it is plastic. And the other thing is once you know that it's tight, reach your hand down in there and just make sure that cap is flush with the housing. You shouldn't feel any sort of groove or anything like that at all. When you don't feel that, then you know for sure that that thing's on 100%. Now we're gonna go ahead and put oil on the car. The great thing about these 1.4 liter turbos is they take exactly 4 quarts. So take your funnel, place it in here, make sure it's good and snug, and just start pouring. All right, we're on that last quart. That last bit in there. And that's exactly 4 quarts. Now we just remove the funnel, set it to the side, and then make sure you put your cap back on. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and check the oil level. Now keep in mind, the oil hasn't gotten back into where the oil filter is at. So I'm gonna wipe this clean again, put it back in. So the oil's gonna be pretty clear, but you can see there's oil all the way up the dipstick, so that's good. So I'm gonna put it back in, and we're gonna go ahead and fire up the engine and check for leaks. All right, once you've checked for leaks and there are none, you can go ahead and reinstall your intake as well as your skid plate. Then you only have one step left, which is to reset that oil light. To reset the light, take your key, turn it to the on position, but don't start it. Press the pedal all the way to the floor 3 times, and then turn it off, and your oil light's been reset. So this concludes the video on how to perform an oil change on your Fiat 500 Abarth. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any future videos. And for all your Abarth, Fiat, and Dodge Dart performance needs, hit up our website at ngencustoms and performance.com. And until next time, I'm out.